item before us so we can complete our work and get back to the floor. And that would be AB 25X. As we left this drama yesterday, we were still working on some refinements to an amendment put forward by Senator DeSaulnier. Senator, if you want to bring us up to date, please. And we're going to attempt to get a quorum. Okay. Please call the roll.
Leno.
Here.
Huff.
Here.
Alquist. Here. Anderson. DeSaulnier.
Here.
Emerson. Here. Evans. Fuller. Here. Hancock. LaMalfa. Liu. Lowenthal. Here. Rubio. Here. Simidian. Wolk. Wright.
Here. We have our quorum. Senator, good morning.
10.
Good morning. Thank you again for indulging us. Senator Lowenthal and I endeavored as best we could, and I think it's fair to say we came very close, and maybe it's just one of those things, the clock ran out. But the gist of things with the amendments is to try to give agencies as much flexibility as possible, but also to make sure that we replenish the funds, particularly for low and moderate housing, as soon as reasonable. So that's why we offered the dates, the mid-year date, June 28th of 2011, and sort of grandfather projects, and still allow for the really important parts in this bill, for instance, Senator Alquist's issue in San Jose. So I think we're provided for that. Senator Lowenthal and I will continue to work with Long Beach and others to see if we can remedy their concerns, but not having an open gate for completely new projects was the motivation.
Very good. I know the efforts have been earnest. Did you consider June 29th?
Well, June 28th is my favorite pet's birthday, so
we'll leave it at that. Senator,
no, there is magic to that number, I'm told by Brian, but it has nothing to do with me.
Thank you, Chair Leno. Yesterday, Senator Hancock asked what pages the language was on for the line of credit concerns, and it was stated at one page, and it's actually on 2 pages, and I just want to be sure that on the public record that it's stated it's on 2 pages, the first one being page 24, lines 6 through 16, the second page being page 27, lines 15 through 26, and this is the language that would clarify, that would help San Jose RDA and other RDAs with their line of credit. Thank you.
Thank you for correcting that. Do we have any other questions for Senator DeSaulnier? So is everyone clear then? We'll be voting on Senator Lowenthal's original bill with the amendment put forward by Senator Saulnier with the date of June 28th, 2011. So it's as amended.
Do we have witnesses for and against first?
Well, we've pretty much heard this already. If there's
it's been amended.
Okay. If there are those who have something to add to the public record, please step forward.
I have to vote in JLAC.
Something new.
Okay.
Yeah. Julie Snyder, Thousand, California. We just want to express our appreciation to the committee for being willing to look at balancing the needs of redevelopment agencies and the protection of these funds that are so important to the shelter needs of Californians with modest needs. So thank you very much.
Well put. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Jason Gonsalves. We represent 50 cities throughout the state. I know we don't want to open this up to other issues. I just would hazard or caution the committee the language that was put in here will guarantee half of your districts will not be able to participate in the 5-year extension. If it's half, if it's 2, there will be unique circumstances. There will be litigation. What we've done is we've narrowed the ability to get a 5-year extension to some cities and some that cannot. And now you have to prove whether or not you can make your $1.7 billion obligation otherwise. It's just a concern that I throw out to the members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonsalves.
Michael Arnold, representing the City of Long Beach. I hope you'll all take a look at the language in the bill. It starts on page 13. There's new language on page 13 and page 14. These are amendments that were added last evening. You'll note that they're striking the language accomplish currently planned activities and investments, and they're adding new language and new requirements, and they also make reference to meeting all of the obligations under Section 34194, which starts on, I think it's around page 50 or so of the bill, all kinds of additional obligations. What basically is happening here is you're setting all of these redevelopment agencies up for a lawsuit to question whether or not they've complied with these various provisions of law that the bill now makes reference to. And let's take just 1 minute and remember what this bill is all about. We're talking about the $1.7 billion that was taken not this year, but that was taken in 9-10. Okay, and so in 9-10, the legislature took $1.7 billion from redevelopment agencies, and they told redevelopment agencies you can borrow these funds to pay the $1.7 billion that we took in 9-10, and then you can pay these monies back, but you must pay them back by a specified date. Okay, and so the redevelopment agency said, all right, we have a cash flow of X, and we're going to be able to pay it off by a specified date. Then in 11-12, what the legislature did was you reduced that cash flow by a half. So now they can't make the loan payment that they committed to make after you took the $1.7 billion in 9-10. So what you really should be doing in this bill is you really should be giving redevelopment agencies unfettered authority to have an additional 5 years to pay back the money. But your staff, your competent staff that knows about redevelopment agency work said, let's at least require that they do certain things. Let's at least limit them to accomplished, currently planned activities and investments. And so you have to make sure that that's the most that you're doing. And then you must, if you look on page 14, prior to the amendments to this bill, you have to have a notice public hearing and adopt a resolution that lists all of the following: A, B, C, D, E, etc. You have to make all of those findings. So prior to the amendment that was added late last night, the bill already had many obligations on a redevelopment agency simply seeking to have an additional 5 years to pay the money because the legislature cut their cash flow in half. So anyway, we're very opposed to the language because we think it would make this portion of the bill unhelpful.
Mr. Chairman, members, David Jones on behalf of the California Redevelopment Association. I would echo Mr. Arnold's comments. It's exactly that, is that we have taken loans under in 2009 thinking we had a cash flow of $800 million. We know that redevelopment agencies, when they made that $1.7 billion payment, roughly $600 million was borrowed from the low and moderate income housing fund. So we took a loan for $600 million thinking that we would have $800 million to make that repayment. In budget year plus one, you cut our $800 million to $400 million. So we have a loan that's due in 2015, or those agencies suffer the death penalty. They go out of business. So what you're doing from what Senator Lowenthal's original bill that gave us checks and balances of making sure you had to make some findings and do some things to have due diligence that you could honestly had a reason to make that extension. You're taking that away from us, and you're going to have many more agencies go out of business. So I hope you understand the consequences of the amendments you've taken to this bill, and CRA is now opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cliff Berg here on behalf of J.P. Morgan Chase. Just wanted to draw your attention, unrelated to the issue being discussed between Senator Lowenthal, Senator DeSaulnier, which I understand is complex and is controversial between the various parties. If this bill does not pass containing the language that Senator Alquist referred to, or another bill which has not been created, then the city of San Jose stands in a position with their letter of credit expiring in November of this year. If existing law remained in the books, that would not be a problem because the law allows San Jose and J.P. Morgan to extend the letter of credit. If the new bill you passed took effect, it would not be a problem because that law allowed the extension of the credit. Is the combination of the law you passed and the court stay that is staying the part of the new law that allows the negotiation to proceed and the extension of the letter of credit. So unless the legislature clarifies by close of business tomorrow that issue, it comes ripe in November, and that letter of credit becomes due, and the law prevents, because of the court stay, an extension, which means San Jose can't get an extension in their letter of credit. The language in the bill does not apply specifically to San Jose. It applies to any other local government that is similarly situated, and there may well be other local governments similarly situated. So the legislature needs to address that issue before the close of business tomorrow, or it is a huge problem.
Thank you. Mr. Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, Roxanne Miller, again representing the Mayor, City Council, City of San Jose. We have been cited in this building as the agency that does things right. 20% of the 100,000 units, affordable units, were built in San Jose. Well, with regard to our aggressive redevelopment, sorry. Not always right.
Lots of support.
Oh, okay. We are
You don't
here.
have to listen to our comments as you testify.
We are here today, again, to take the opportunity to remind you of the dire consequences for San Jose and other redevelopment agencies. We issued debt internal. We paid on time R2 payments, $72 million. We met the letter of the law 2 years ago. We're trying to meet it today. We want to be in business. This puts a coffin on a lot of agencies. It's not an incentive for us to do things. This can end it. So please listen to Mr. Lowenthal, listen to my colleagues, and please help us on this, and keep in mind on the line of credit. We are very concerned at this point. Department of Finance continues to indicate to all of us this package will not be signed. We have November 25th to solve that issue, or we are set with a $93 million default in San Jose. Please help us.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Brian Augusta, I'm sorry I'm a little bit out of order, but speaking in favor of the provision that's just been added to the bill. I just wanted to clear the intent here, despite the comments from some of our local government folks, is to capture those obligations that they have already incurred. So we're not trying to undermine their ability to pay off those existing obligations. What we're trying to address is a sort of aspirational aspect of the prior language, which essentially allowed them to count anything that would, at any time, they hope to do in the future. So we are trying to capture that, and I think by moving the date, we've captured more of them. So I think we've addressed that concern with this language, and we hope you would support it.
Thank you, Mr. Augusta. Anyone else like to add to public comment? Senator Lowenthal, and then a couple questions for Senator DeSaulnier.
As Senator DeSaulnier indicated, we tried to work something out, and we came close, but it was at the end. And I supported this bill as amended on September 2nd. But, however, I really opposed the bill today. I opposed the bill. The whole point of this bill was was to give RDA some flexibility after AB 26X and AB 27X. The bill as currently amended gives less flexibility. It's also important to note this bill is not needed now as amended. The Assembly passed out SB 8X yesterday out of their Budget Committee, which is the original, which is the bill that has the line of credit, the same thing as this one, but does not have this amendment. It's exactly the same bill without this amendment in it. And that bill should be heading over to the Senate today. You know, we should not be adding more burdens to cities and to RDAs. Let's be real honest. We have done some tremendous hurtful things to RDAs. It would be nice when we have a governor that is very reluctant to be supporting all of this to go forward with the RDAs and the cities with a cleanup bill that does not put an additional burden on cities and RDAs. We already have a bill that's coming through that doesn't do that. This bill says, no, we want to go forward and having all the cities and the RDAs in opposition to us when the governor already doesn't need a whole lot to be vetoing anything. This is finally a chance to begin the healing, to say we've taken their money, We will also have coming forward SB 450 members, which is some of the most restrictive, and I'm the author of that. It came out 59-0, real reform on the housing. So it's not as if we're not sending real reforms. We don't have to keep adding on to things. It would be nice for the Senate to say we can be a partner in flexibility with locals. This bill takes us away from that. And now we're going to be, if this bill goes through, we're going to be sending to the governor another RDA bill that the locals will be opposing. I think that's silly when we have another vehicle out there that's exactly the same as this, except without this amendment. I urge a no vote.
Senator Huff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I made some comments yesterday I won't restate. I think it was wrong for us to have terminated redevelopment in the first place, but you're seeing the logical consequences of our action before. And even as we're going through this very much inside baseball analysis of impacts of the action we previously taken, I see eyes glazing over, and I almost smell the grease in the tracks. And I just want to caution us that, yeah, the locals are opposed. And we sometimes forget that they're opposed for a reason. These are real consequences. You heard San Jose talk about it. You heard other members, speakers testify that because of previous action that we did, no fault of the city's own, they're in a situation where they'd like to help. But yet again, we're going to tie their hands. I've certainly got cities that we took all their money the first time around. So they'd like to participate, they'd like to help, and then we say, well, we want you to help, but we're not going to allow you to do that. And it just doesn't make any sense. I oppose this today. I would recommend a no, and I recommend that we have a true working group that has members that represent both parties, big cities, little cities. Let's do the best we can to fix this, absent just repealing it like I would prefer we do. But this is restricting, not giving the flexibility that we need to tackle these very, very real problems.
Senator Wolk.
I just have a question, and I came a little late because we had a JLAC meeting, but on SB 8X, do we know the other bill that came out of whatever group was going on? Do the League of Cities and CRA support that?
Yes, he just said that they do.
Who just said that?
Dave Jones.
I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't hear you.
They don't support anything.
I apologize.
Yeah,
You can just shake your head.
Next, this.
Just need to know.
Mr. Jones.
It's nuanced with our lawsuit pending. The CRA board voted not to engage any of those due to the pending lawsuit, so we don't have an official position on those bills. We do, however, oppose this version of this language here in this amendment.
Yes, but SB 8X, have we testified on that? And the other
no, we did not testify on that. We don't, like the CRA said, we don't want to engage in making amendments to what we think is fundamentally unconstitutional and is a subject of litigation.
And I assume the League of Cities is nowhere today?
They're not here, but I imagine they're in a similar situation.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll go on behalf of 50 small cities throughout the state. We are supportive of the language absent these amendments. It's safe to say on behalf of those cities, this language, without Senator DeSaulniers' amendments, does not hurt local governments. It adds flexibility. So they are supportive. There's just, the lawsuit litigation that CRA is.
I could say that Burbank is supportive of the original version of the bill, Burbank redevelopment.
And those 50 cities that you represent are opposed then to this new version?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Simidian.
Yeah, where to begin to untangle all this? Let me just say on the record, I've tried to bite my lips for the last 6 months, but here we are today where we've got real decisions have to be made, deadlines upon us, and CRA says we didn't engage, we don't want to engage, we can't engage. And you know what? That's been a big part of the problem since the conversation began 6+ months ago, with all due respect. Lots of blame to go around for the fix we're in today. But you know what? If more people had said we're actually going to try and solve this problem instead of said let's go for the boxing gloves, we'd be in a better place today. I understand you don't see it that way, but my frustration at this point with folks who are unwilling to engage and be part of the solution and then wonder why there's a problem, I'm sort of at rope's end. On this issue, I want to just underscore for my colleagues that the issue that San Jose raises is not a small issue. It is real, it is tangible, it is large. And guys, it's a city of 1 million people, so if they've got a big problem, it affects a lot of folks. So we got to get that one sorted out. We had a bill that Senator Lowenthal thought was a pretty good piece of work. Now we've got some amendments, Senator Lowenthal, that you think undermine that pretty good piece of work. Could I get a one-sentence explanation of what do the amendments do in the judgment of the author, and why is it important that we do it?
Well, as long as I can have a Semidian-like sentence, I can.
Yes, run-on sentences are more than allowed, sir. Thank you.
Well, with all due respect to the testimony today, and I won't call hyperbole, I know there's a lot of emotion involved in this. We don't believe, our staff, the committee staff and I, that it will do the things that some of the witnesses have just testified from RDA. All we're trying to do is make sure that housing doesn't get forgotten in the process, and that new projects don't start before we start replenishing the funds. So that's our view of things. I would say, just in terms of process, this is really important for Senator Alquist and Senator Semidian and for other jurisdictions to get it right. As I understand the process, this is meant as a fix. Our amendments are basically meant as a deep breath. Don't go out and starting new projects that you haven't done and get entitled before 2028 or January 28th of 2011.
And are those housing projects or any projects?
Those are any projects. So what I'm concerned about is jurisdictions will go out and do public works projects that they're just starting to work on now before we basically get the housing funds start to be replenished 5 years out. So that the second part of the process, at least it's been explained to me by leadership in this House, is when we come back, we've got a whole other series of issues to deal with and things that I think are important. I would agree with some of the representatives from the cities and the RDAs, Mr. Gonzalez, hardship cases. We talked about that yesterday. So we've got more work to do. I think this is the urgency to fix some of the issues that you and Senator Alquist have talked about. Our amendments are just meant to have everybody take a deep breath on the housing side and not go out and start new projects before we start to replenish those funds.
The fundamental concern you have is that if there isn't a timeout on projects of any type, that sucks up all the revenue that might be available for housing projects until we sort that issue out?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the bad thing that would happen, in your judgment, if we don't take the amendments, is that we would 3 to 6 to 9 months to a year from now say, oh my gosh, we don't have any ability to move forward on affordable housing because the money has all been used up for other projects.
And many of the providers of that affordable housing, people like Mercy Housing and Habitat and smaller groups, will actually go out of business.
I know, if you'll allow me to put him in the same camp with me, and he may not want to, Senator Lowenthal and I have been in what I would call the mend it, don't end it camp since the beginning of these conversations. I also know, Senator Lowenthal, that you've been an advocate during the time we've been colleagues for affordable housing. So I've got Mr. DeSaulnier saying, want to do this to make sure that we don't eliminate our potential for affordable housing, and yet I've got you saying that this is a poison pill in your view on the bill, not to overstate it. Could you tell me again why, and the other members obviously why, because I'm trying to understand what the crux of the argument is here.
Let me say that whether we pass these amendments or not, the issues that San Jose has raised were in the original bill. We're not amending those out at all. They're there. They're in also those same are in the exact same bill that's coming over from the Assembly, SB 8X. So that issue is not germane to our discussion because it's either fixed in both bills or not fixed in any.
But I think.
But let me get back to you.
I think the concern from the folks of San Jose, and I'm going to look for a head nod if I've got it right, is that if this issue gums up the works on this bill, and this bill doesn't move forward because it gums it up.
But the other bill has the same fix, and it's coming over from if we don't pass this bill today, there is the bill that has the San Jose fix coming to the Senate today. So
colleagues,
that I'm in support of.
Another way to look at this is that should there be support for the bill today as amended to move to our floor, there will also be the option of supporting the original without the DeSaulnier amendment coming from the Assembly. So,
and then if I could just, I apologize because I cut off my colleague and I wanted to hear his answer to the question.
The point is, why did we put in currently planned activities and investments? RDAs have come to me and said, look, we have planned projects right now. We were going to be implementing now. We were going to be going to contract. But we want to give the money, the $1.7 billion, our share, back to the state. We're willing to do that. We're willing to go through these hurdles that the state is asking us to do. But now you can't tell us that those projects that we were about to move forward are now off the table because they were not. And that's a fair thing. I do not think that we should be at war with these cities at this moment and these RDAs. That's why they're asking for the original version, because they were planning it, they were going to contract, but then we took their money away from them. And so they said, okay, we'll stop it. Now it says unless you have those contracts, you can't do those projects. That is unfair. That is an overkill. I ask for not to accept these amendments.
Mr. Chairman, procedurally then, where are we with the status of the amendments?
It will be up for a vote very shortly.
On the amendments?
The bill as amended.
So we do not have the option to vote to amend. The bill is amended, and it's a take it or leave it proposition on the whole body.
If there's not a vote in support of the bill as amended, we could certainly entertain a motion for the bill without the amendment.
And would it be procedurally proper to simply offer a substitute motion prior to the vote to take up the bill without amendments as a substitute motion?
You're always welcome to do that, and that would take priority.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Hancock and then Senator Alquist. And then.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm on. Okay. I do have some additional questions now as well. It has been extremely important to me that we try to retain as much money as possible for low and moderate income housing. I know that is a major, major concern for many, many people in our communities. I also think that what we need to do for San Jose and other cities that may be in that position is very important. And somehow we have to find a way to get that flexibility enacted before the next 2 days. But actually, I do care about other projects as well. And some of my cities do have major projects that aren't housing, but that are substantially committed for. And if this would make it impossible for those to go forward, I don't think that I can support the amendments either, although I hope we can find something for low-income housing. Senator Lowenthal, question. SB 450, which you said is real reform on housing, could you just give us a sentence on what that is?
Yeah, SB 450 does a number of things, and it has been a bipartisan bill. It came out of the Assembly yesterday with a 59-0 vote coming to the Senate. Came out of our vote. It does a number of both oversight, because we have not been able to audit those, because there have been no resources to audit those agencies that have not spent their money on housing as they've taken that 20%. We've also added a new category now, cities we're adding on to in SB 450 in the sense that that 20% set aside up until now said a number of things. One of the things that existing redevelopment agencies had to do, and they supported this with CRA, two things which are major steps forward. One was that they said that up until now they had to spend money on very low income, or moderate income housing, basically in a percentage form, equal percent. They've all agreed to spend 25% on extremely low-income housing. So for the first time, we are going to have, in SB 450, agencies taking this 20%, having to spend money on extremely low-income housing, and the RDAs agreed to that. Difficult for them to swallow, but that's why it was again. They agreed to it. Also, when there's replacement housing, when we tear down housing, cities do construction and they tear down housing. Up until now, they've been able to do any formula that they wanted to. They could do rehab housing. They've also agreed, even though they didn't like it, to redevelopment agencies to the idea that 75% of that replacement has to be new housing. affordable with extremely low in that. These are major steps that we're already asking redevelopment agencies to do. You do this, you are piling on.
Do you want to wait or do you want to speak? No. Okay. Senator Alquist.
Thank you. I first need to have Roxanne and Mr. Berg come back, and they're just outside, but it's very important that I ask this question.
Okay.
If they could come up to the table, please. Ms. Miller and Mr. Berg. As representing the majority of San Jose, I really want to be sure that I get this right. Listening to your testimony earlier, I'm understanding, and I want you to tell me if I'm understanding this correctly, that you do not like the amendments, that you believe that the original legislation, which contains lines 24 and 27 on the lines of credit, would sufficiently protect you so that you would not have this problem of $93 million in November, because I'm at this point tempted to vote no on the bill with the amendments before us, assuming that there's other legislation. I'm understanding other legislation that contains the line of credit provisions that San Jose needs. Now, am I correct in understanding all of that?
Senator Alquist, if I could just reframe this a little bit so we get to the core of it and we can move on. Given that your issue, as Mr. Berg has described, is present in the amended and unamended, can you speak specifically to your issue relative to the amendments that Senator Sonia is putting forward? Because that's the only difference between the two versions.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are concerned that inserting the amendments into this bill will expand the lack of flexibility that we have at this point at the local level to deal with the issue that we are dealing with Mr. Berg and J.P. Morgan, as well as will actually be a deterrent for us continuing to do housing and to do it well. And to Mr. Lowenthal's point, the San Jose has been at the table on all negotiations on SB 450 reform, and we, unlike others perhaps, have been with your staff and with the Assembly staff dealing with amendments in this bill so that it would allow us to stay alive and to work on the issues that Senator is assisting us with.
So to ask you directly, and if this is a yes or no, do you feel that SB 450 protects you in a way that this bill, as amended, does not? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think just to clarify, particularly from J.P. Morgan's standpoint, we're agnostic on the policy dispute between Senator Lowenthal and the senator over the amendment. But if the amendment means the bill fails, then we would be concerned about the amendment, because if this bill fails because of that amendment, then the other bill is a concern that it gets bogged down in the same fight when it gets here, and it gets bogged down. We need a bill to pass with the unrelated provision that Senator Alquist has talked about and Senator Simitian has talked about, and to the extent that the DeSaulnier amendment means this bill fails and the other bill fails, then our problem doesn't get solved.
Okay. So, folks, we don't have unlimited time here, and I don't want us to keep going around the same block. So Senator Rubio would like to speak after Senator Huff speaks, and then, just to reframe this, given the efforts that Senator Sonia has put into all this, I'm going to suggest, since we already have a motion for the bill before us as amended, that's always possible, that we might consider taking up the bill as amended. If that bill fails, we always have the opportunity. That will give us a clear read of how we feel about the amendments, whereas if we were to take it up without the amendments, we may not get to that question, because I would imagine there'll be many who just want to vote for the protections that are in both. Also keep in mind that there is the unamended version coming over from the Assembly, so if you're of the mind that we might have a broader discussion on the floor of both versions, then there's no harm to support as amended, given that there's always the option to support the unamended on the floor. Those are our options out here. So Senator Huff, then Senator Rubio, and then maybe we can get to a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was stated that CRA hasn't been helpful or cooperated in this. If that means that they haven't supplied the bullets or the gun to the people doing the assassination, that's true. They have not cooperated. However, having said that, they have been consistent from the beginning. They felt the actions to kill redevelopment and take the money was illegal, and they had always planned to sue. Having said that, they did engage, along with the League of Cities. They're in my office virtually daily, as well as Senator Wright's, trying to create a win-win solution. They came up with that win-win solution that would have generated money without killing redevelopment, that would have helped the state. We didn't like that as a corporate body, therefore we ignored that. But to say they weren't engaged or trying to help the state with this problem would be inaccurate. Having said all that, I don't like either one of these amendments because it's amending something that I just fundamentally, viscerally reacted to in the first place. Having said that, I believe Senator Lowenthal's is a better version in that we have it coming from the floor. I'm not sure whether my action is needed or not, but I will do what I can to help Senator Lowenthal's version survive. Thank you,
Senator Huff. Senator Rubio.
I agree. To get to the specific issue, I would not support a bill today that includes the amendments. That's one, to be very straightforward on that front. Second, on the larger issue of this entire debate, I wonder if it's for naught, because it was a similar debate that occurred towards the end of the budget discussions where CRA did come forward with a very similar package saying, we'll give you the money. If all you want is $1.7 billion, we'll give it to you, but let us keep our shell or our organization so that we can move forward on all these pending projects. If it wasn't good then, what has changed between then and now to lead us to believe that the governor is going to sign this bill? So I wonder if we're just sitting here spinning our wheels on that particular subject. But with that said, lastly, I want to make it very clear on the record. Is this a San Jose play, or does this benefit all redevelopment agencies throughout the state? I need someone from the Redevelopment Association to tell us, are there other redevelopment agencies that find themselves in a similar fashion or situation where the city of Fresno, albeit not 1 million people, has a higher unemployment rate? So one could easily make the argument that we ought to be looking for some flexibility in the elimination to provide some path for them.
Mr. Jones, I think this is specifically with regard to the letters of credit then.
Right. Rockland, we know of Rockland and San Jose are in similar situations. We don't know there may be others. The other provisions of the bill are helpful to agencies. We don't know how many. We know there are agencies that are going to go out of business in 2015 if they can't make that loan repayment. So that provision that Senator Lowenthal has in his bill will be helpful to certain agencies.
Good. I will support an effort to provide some flexibility to all RDAs in a global fashion rather than just individually. So, Senator DeSalina, that's where I stand. Thank you.
All right. Senator DeSalina, you want to finish up? And then...
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the discussion. I'm sorry to cause so much trouble. I just thought, and I do think it's very important, but let's focus in on the amendments and the differences. I would argue, first of all, on Mr. Rubio's case, and I don't have any crystal ball on what the administration will sign or will not sign, but from my perspective, it's less likely that he will sign it if we give cities and redevelopment agencies too much flexibility. Senator Lowenthal and I were basically working on one word yesterday, and it really goes to something Senator Lowenthal or Senator Hancock talked about, which we've been talking about for a long time, but this is just in terms of trying to protect future funding for housing. That's what these amendments is about, is allowing cities that can opt in and giving them more ability to opt in, and then be able to make sure that redevelopment money or housing set-aside money gets replenished at an appropriate time and doesn't get put in the back of the line. We all know that there have been abuses. Senator Lowenthal's bill will help that prospectively, but it doesn't, in my view, help with the existing problem of the cash flow of the agencies and the appropriateness of spending money, at least in some future time, for housing. So that's what the amendments are about. I would argue that by passing this bill without the amendments and giving greater flexibility for new projects that are planning, but this was our problem in trying to define planning for the specific instance we were dealing with Long Beach is what is planning? And what we tried to do by going back to the middle of 2011 is allowing projects that are already in the queue. And then all we're doing is putting the housing money so that it can be replenished at an appropriate pace. So I would argue that we would be better passing the bill with the amendments, having the Assembly bill come over. Maybe that'll give us more time, Senator Lowenthal and I, to work on a kumbaya moment where we can actually get these remedied. And then lastly, let me say, I think part of the anxiety here goes much larger than this. Is cities don't have enough money. They have been very creative in good and bad ways about using redevelopment, and they're going to have to go back and lay people off. They're already laying people off. I'm sympathetic with that. But the amendments just go to trying to be appropriate to the expenses and keeping people who provide affordable housing with good-paying jobs in the queue so that at some point we can start with those projects again.
Thank you, Senator Saulnier. Senator Lowenthal?
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Before you do so, can I just reiterate a comment I made earlier that I think from what I've heard here, there's full support for the bill as unamended. And if we were to take that vote first, we would, I think, be disrespectful of the effort and all the debate around the bill as amended.
Fine. I will withdraw my motion.
So we can do one and then do.
If this does not pass, then you will entertain a substitute.
I would expect that we will vote on the bill as unamended.
Thank you.
Of course. So everyone's on the same page here. We're going to take the vote on Senator Lowenthal's bill with the DeSaulnier amendment.
Before we do that,
yes.
I just want to make sure that there is no parliamentary impediment to doing that. The reason I ask that question is we have one measure on our agenda. If we vote that measure down, which in the absence of a substitute motion we would be required to do to get to another question, then we have no item before us. Presumably someone could ask for reconsideration on the measure before us, but it's then unclear to me as a parliamentary matter how we proceed on a measure that is not before us when the only measure that is before us has been defeated. So could we just take a moment, and even if we need
it's a reasonable point.
Make a phone call, figure that out.
Why did you not want to do a substitute? I don't get
He
that.
doesn't want to do the substitute.
But why? It forces us
To respect for this. And I understand.
Do you care? What do you, I mean, a substitute doesn't force us to vote against.
You don't have to be forced to vote against.
Oh, am I taking your bill up? Come up. You're a member. Yeah.
Hello?
Okay. Folks, the Senate Secretary is coming up, but I'm going to offer my own view of this to address Senator Smidian's question specifically, which will be finally decided by the Secretary of the Senate, is that we could easily take up the agendized item, which is the bill as amended, and if that were to fail, we could offer an amendment to remove the amendment from the agendized bill and vote on it without the amendment. And that would all be kosher, as we say. But we'll let the Secretary of the Senate decide that for us.
Since at that point there is no measure before us because the measure would have been defeated, would you anticipate that we would have to provide immediate reconsideration in the following moments?
Yes.
And is reconsideration? I'm sorry. I'll
Mr. Schmidt will be here soon. Senator Lowenthal.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the chair's point that
it's actually moot
to
at
do
this
a
point.
substitute motion
Great,
to do is disrespectful. Yeah. That means that we have to vote against something, our colleague. A substitute motion means that we're not voting against
you can always make a substitute motion.
I would rather make a substitute motion now and not have to vote against it.
Mr. Chair.
One moment, please. Senator Anderson.
I agree with both of you. Maybe we could ask the senator what his preference was, and then that way we would be most respectful to him.
Following the rules of order here, Greg Schmidt has confirmed that the read of it that I had just explained is doable with immediate reconsideration should the amended version fail. But since then, Senator Lowenthal has had a change of mind and is making a substitute motion, as I understand it.
I would prefer not to have to vote no on. I would prefer to have a substitute motion and not.
Oh, you have that right.
And that is to vote on the bill without the amendments, or as was presented yesterday before the.
And that is a motion, substitute motion.
And that is my motion.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion before us. Senator Ahlquist.
Thank you. I want to indicate that I'm understanding that finance indicates that a less complicated bill with the line of credit provisions may be better received by the administration, and given several cities' predicament when it comes to the line of credit, I wanted on the record that that's why I will be supporting the substitute motion. And I want to add that what we really need to be voting on is the line of credit provisions due to the urgency that several of our cities face, including San Jose, but others also.
Very good. Mr. Cohen, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Just to be clear, Michael Cohen with the Department of Finance. The Department of Finance is opposed to all measures that will make changes to redevelopment pending the Supreme Court decision in January. Obviously, we make recommendations to the governor. The governor can review any available information when he makes bill signing or veto decisions. But at this point, it's the department's position to oppose all changes to redevelopment before the Supreme Court.
Senator Ahlquist.
On that point, then are you saying that finance would oppose having a bill that speaks to two provisions that are on page 24, lines 6 through 16, and page 27, lines 15 through 26 of this original legislation, and it's only with these two pieces that would be signed that RDAs, including San Jose, would have their line of credit concern taken care of and not be $93 million in the hole? What is your position?
At this point, the only bill we've reviewed is the totality of the one you're looking at right now. We are opposed to that bill. I don't think the amendments you've been discussing would change our position on that.
The bill without the amendments.
We analyzed the bill without the amendments. We really haven't done a formal analysis of today's bill with the amendments, but judging by having reviewed them, I don't think those amendments would change our position.
I'm not asking about the bill with
and
amendments.
I'm telling you that we have not analyzed a bill with simply those two provisions that you're talking about.
So the answer is you have no position on that.
I did tell you that, however, that our global position on redevelopment bills is that the matter is pending before the Supreme Court. We don't know what the baseline is we're evaluating things from, which makes it nearly impossible for us to advise the governor on a fiscal effect of a redevelopment bill. And therefore, as a general rule, yes, we are opposed to all measures that change redevelopment policy until January 15th.
Okay, we're going to get this done, folks, so please focus. Senator Saulnier, do you have a comment with regard to the now substitute motion before us?
No.
Okay. Senator Hancock, is this another comment? Go ahead.
It is a comment.
Yes.
Again, I feel like I have to keep saying because nobody else does. The reason we got into this is two-thirds vote requirements for budgets in the past, was two-thirds votes requirement for revenue, and the fact that the state had no money to backfill redevelopment agencies for schools. We're talking about educating our children. I think it's important that we move forward and that we also have the greatest flexibility for the many good things that redevelopment agencies were doing. I will vote for the substitute motion. I think we should focus at this point on SB 450 that Senator Lowenthal is doing because we need to think very seriously about how we're going to replenish our low and moderate income housing funds. Ideally, we would do a bond, but we probably can't go out and actually do a bond for several years, so we have to find ways to do this. And I would thank Senator DeSaulnier, should this motion pass, for making this an issue that is front and center and on our radar screen, because we're going to have to find a way to deal with it.
So we're going to take the vote in a moment. I wish to explain my vote because it may not be self-evident, but given that it's the only opportunity for me to to have a vote in favor of Senator Saulnier's amendment, I will be voting no on the substitute amendment, which I expect to pass, and that will be the conclusion of this committee hearing. But should it get to the floor then unamended as you originally proposed it, I am in full support of it there. Yes, Senator.
I want to explain that I'm not going to support this at all because the matter is pending in the courts and we don't really know what we're amending. So, consistent with my position on other issues,
yes.
I'll just stay off of it.
Very good. Consistent position. So, colleagues, we have this substitute amendment before us, which is Senator Lowenthal's bill, AB 25X, unamended, and we will call the roll.
Leno?
No.
Huff?
Aye.
Alquist?
Aye.
Anderson? No. DeSaulnier?
No.
Emerson? Evans? Fuller? No. Hancock? Aye. LaMalfa? No. Liu? Lowenthal? Aye. Rubio? Simidian? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? No. Liu, aye. 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 7. 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 to 7.
There is the likelihood that Senator Emerson is coming back, and this vote's very close at this point. 8 aye votes. It needs an additional vote. I can't tell you. I know Senator Emerson's vote, so why don't we place the bill on call and see if Senator Emerson will be returning. Do we have any other absent members? No, I think that's it.
Just Senator Emerson.
So the bill's on call. And if that, colleagues, should this substitute motion fail, there is the bill as amended before us. So we'll be pausing for just a moment.
And it's a committee amendment.
Pause concluded. We will resume the business of the committee. If you could please lift the call the absent members.
9-7, measure passes.
So the substitute motion passes 9-7. The original bill, unamended, moves to the floor. Lamalfa, aye. 10-7 is the final count. Thank you to everyone for your patience, for participating in the debate. No further business before us. We are adjourned.